I have never been to prison, and I hope that that is your story too. And although I have never been to prison, I really don't know what it's like, and I'm not trying to go to find out. What I can say is being in prison, it's a place that's confined. It's a place where there's restrictions. It's a place where you're limited to your level of access. What I know is that you don't have the same freedom that you had living as a civilian. You cannot get up whenever you want to get up. You cannot go to bed whenever you want to go to bed. You have to eat what's set before you, what's given to you. You do not have the option and the choice that you once did, being out in the open and having the liberty and having the freedom to pick and choose what you like and what you want. You know, having your favorite ice cream, having your favorite toppings on your pizza, having your favorite soda pop, you know, going to your favorite restaurants, going out and shopping at the mall. You no longer have that freedom. You no longer have that liberty when you're in prison. It's a whole different world. It's not as sanitary. You know, you're taking orders from people. Someone set over you, and you may share a room with someone. You may not want to share a room with. You may want to be by yourself. But in prison, it doesn't work like that. And sometimes it takes for people to go to prison to value the freedom that they once had. That's what prison is for. Prison is it's like a timeout. It's like a timeout. And you have some people, they are put in timeout longer than others. And the purpose of imprisonment is to actually sit and think about your actions. It's a place for you to sit and consider your life, consider your actions, consider what you did and how you offended the other person or whatever it was for you to get in there. That's what that place is for. And so I say all that to say of how before coming to Christ, I was a prisoner to sin. I was imprisoned by sin. There were things that I could not see. There were things that I did not know until I got saved. So it's like when you're in prison, you know, it can come to a place where you don't want to leave prison because you've now become desensitized to your actions. You've become numb to your actions. You've become desensitized to the fact that you're in here because you did something bad, but you've learned to adjust to that way of life now. And that's why you may know people and you may meet people who they go to prison and they come out and they go back in, and you may say, well, why would someone want to go back to prison? Well, that's what happens when a person begins to become desensitized, when a person begins to grow numb to the fact that this is supposed to be a place of considering. This is supposed to be a place for me to evaluate the freedom that I once had. Sin is that way. Sin is that way. If I don't value the freedom that God has made available to me and I go back into sin, then that's going to bring me back into bondage. That's going to cause me to be back chained up. That's going to cause me to go back into the same things that I once were freed from. You know, sometimes we don't realize how deep into bondage we were in until we're free. And you don't realize how messed up you were until you were out of prison. Like, man, I was messed up in that place. That place is a dark place. I've heard of people's testimonies of them saying how dark prison is and how dark that it was, because, like I said, it's a confined place. It's limited to what exposure you have in there, you know, versus the world to where it's brighter, it's loud, it's open, prison, jail, whatever you want to call it. It's closed off. You're in there with people that are in there for the same reason you're in there. They broke the law. They committed a crime. You're being told what to do, when to get up, when to go to bed. You have to use this toothbrush that may not be the cleanest, may not be your type of brand to use. You just take what's given to you. And so sin makes us a slave to it. And sometimes you don't realize how blinded you were until the Lord opens your eyes. I didn't realize how messed up I was until I got saved. I didn't realize how deep into bondage I was in until I got saved, until the Lord began to break the chains off of me. Yeah. Sin causes you to feel guilty. It causes you to be open to failure. It causes you to seek affirmation in the wrong areas. It causes you to feel like you have to compete with people. It causes you to, just lust after things that does not belong to you. It causes you to make just bad decisions. And something that I was reminded of tonight is how before coming to Christ, there were people that I used to hang with. There were people who I knew, people who I walked with, and we did things together. And those that I used to hang out with, there were times where I remember where we got introduced to the Lord. I remember having a friend in high school who was a Christian at the time. And at that time, I was not a Christian. I was not saved. I was not trying to serve the Lord. I was not trying to follow the Lord. I was trying to live my own life. But that one friend, it was maybe about 5 of us that hung out together every day. Every day we hung out and we would spend time together in lunch. And that one friend would always talk about God to us, would always come and, try to, in their own good way, tell us how we ought to live. And I remember judging the person and making the person feel bad and guilty about judging us and telling us that the way we were living was wrong. And then, maybe a year later or maybe 2 years later, I ended up getting saved and giving my life to the Lord just for that same individual who came and told me about God to go back into the world. Just for them to come, or just for me to come and get saved, and then to go and share my exciting news with them, and to find out that they no longer wanted to serve the Lord. And so I added that in because those same individuals who I used to hang out with, and we all were introduced to God. We all were made fully aware that there was a God and that he sent his son to die for us and that we needed to live right. We needed to live right. We were fully aware of that. Those same individuals are still in the world doing the same thing that they were doing before I left the world. And let me tell you, that's imprisonment. That's imprisonment. That's what sin does to you. Sin blinds you and binds you. Sin blinds you and binds you. That's what it does. You don't realize that you really aren't free. See, we think freedom is being a civilian, not actually being in the physical facility, not actually being in the jail facility or the prison facility. We think freedom is being able to go and come as we please. We think freedom is having our own money, having our own car, having our own apartment or our own house, being able to come and go as we please, wherever we want to go, spending our money on what we want to spend our money on, nobody telling us what to do. I have a freedom of speech. You have a freedom of speech. And so I say what I want, when I want. No one holds me accountable. And that's freedom. That's what the world has taught us is freedom. Yeah. You're finally 18. You know, you don't have anyone over you telling you when to come in, be in by the time the street lights come on. Make sure you do your homework. Make sure you make up your bed. You don't have that anymore. And so to us, what society has taught us is that freedom looks like this. But really, that's bondage, you know? Being able to smoke weed when you want to smoke weed. Being able to fornicate when you want to fornicate with whoever you want to be intimate with, being able to go clubbing, being able to go out and get a drink at the bar. Yeah, we think that that's freedom when that's really a lifestyle of bondage. That's a lifestyle of sin. And so Solomon says in Ecclesiastes in, I believe, 4 verse 14, for out of prison we've come to reign, or he's come to reign, but we've come to reign because we are kings and priests. And what he is saying is that I started off in prison. I started off in bondage. And all of us, we start off that way because we are born and shaped into iniquity. And so we start off in sin. And sin opens the door to curses. Sin opens the door to cycles. And what these cycles and what these curses do is it chains us. It chains us into thinking that this is freedom. It makes me think about that elephant that, and I've shared this before. It makes me think about that elephant who has been chained since its youth, and eventually, you know, it grows up. It grows up, but its mind has not adjusted or shifted. It grows up, and one day the chains from this elephant is taken off and removed. And that elephant, because its mind has not shifted or adjusted, it doesn't know that it's free. It thinks that it's been free though, although it's been chained, it's been bound from its youth. That elephant, it thinks that it is free. And so although the chains, the physical chains are gone off this elephant, there are chains in its mind. It doesn't realize that in its mental state, in its way of thinking, it's in bondage. It's in bondage. Although it's big and it's strong and it's mighty, and if it really wanted to, if its mind was able to adjust and to shift, it can actually cause some destruction, this elephant. But it doesn't know that it's free because of its mind. And that's the thing. Many of you, you don't know that you're in bondage. You don't know that you're blinded. There were so many things that I could not see until the Lord opened my eyes. And I'm glad the Lord did it when he did it. I'm glad the Lord opened my eyes when he did, because it's by the Lord's mercy that I am where I am today. Because he could have left me where he found me. He could have left me in sin. He could have left me to myself. He could have left me with my chains. He could have left me with my shackles, thinking that I'm free because I live in a world where I am being taught that freedom looks this way. He could have left me that way, but he did not. He decided to call me forth, and he decided to give me a robe and give me shoes and give me a ring on my hand and give me a crown upon my head and give me a kiss on the cheek, and to let me know that he loves me, and to let me know that out of prison he's called me to reign. And so I am no longer a slave to my emotions. I am no longer a slave to my feelings. I am no longer a slave to sin. I am no longer a slave to the devil. I am no longer a slave to my flesh. I am no longer a slave to my culture, to my society, to my ethnic background. I'm no longer a slave to these things. He's called me out of prison, and he's called me out only to reign. That's why he would call you out of prison. No, I've called you out to reign. And so the sons of God, we've been called out of prison, out of this state of bondage, to govern and to reign, because the word of God calls us kings and priests. And what does kings do? Kings, they reign, they judge, they govern. Yeah, they have a certain mentality. They have a mindset that's quick. That's why the word of God can say that the king's business requires haste, because he's the king. He's someone who he has to make quick decisions, and everyone on his team has to be just as adjustable as him, because he may make this decree, he may sign this law, and if you're not on board, if you are not in agreement, then you're going to be removed, just like Vashti. Yeah, you already know that the king's business requires haste. You already know that. You already know what it's like being in a kingdom. You've been here. You know what it's like. And so when the king makes an order, you gotta adjust. You have to move with haste. Queen Vashti felt as though, this time I don't want to adjust. I don't want to yield. I don't want to submit. I don't want to move with haste. I want to make my own decisions. And let me tell you, she got removed. Matter of fact, she got replaced. And so when we are not quick to adjust, when we are not quick to shift, then the Lord will remove you. Yeah, you cannot be a king if you don't know how to govern and how to reign. And he calls us a priest. Yeah. Not everybody in the Old Testament had the office of a priest. It was the Levites. Yeah. They took the office of a priest and they had a specific role. They were the ones that would go and offer up the sacrifices and the atonement for the sins of the people. They were the ones who not only offered up the sacrifices, but got to partake in the blessings of it. Yeah, when that sacrifice was consumed by the Lord, it was the Levites. It was the Levites, the high priests and his sons, Aaron and his sons. It was them. They were the ones that were able to eat after the sacrifice was consumed. And so we're called to be kings and to be priests. And so we're called to govern and we're called to reign. We're called to bring judgment. And so we got to move with haste. If we don't jump on board to when a king is making a new order, then we're going to be removed like Vashti. And that's not the Lord's desire. And so he's called us out of a lifestyle of sin. And so we have to refrain from going back to what he's delivered us from, because as I stated, you have people who they love jail. They love jail and they keep going back to jail. And so when God calls us out of sin, we got to hate sin. No, I got to hate jail. I got to remember what it was like. Sometimes we forget what sin was like. We forget the nights where, we were depressed. We forget the nights where we felt like nobody understood our pain. Nobody knew what it was that we were going through. Nobody knows our story. We felt like, you know what it was like when you were in sin. You know how empty you felt. You know the void that you felt. You know how it feels to always be in competition with the next person and feeling like you always have to meet the world standard. You know what's trending now, what's new, what's the new style. Okay, it's that now. That's what people are doing with their hair. That's what people are doing with their faces. They're doing the lashes thing. They're doing the makeup thing. Okay, they're doing the nail thing. Everybody's styling their nails and it's like 20 inches long. Okay, that's the thing now. Yeah, you know what it was like. And so we have to hate being in prison. For those who have gone to prison and they've come out, they do everything to not go back. Those that actually learned their lesson, no, I don't want to go back. Do you know what it's like? People have to tell you when to get up and when to go to bed. They give you clothes. Sometimes the stains in it are not cleaned out or not fully washed. Yeah, sometimes the toilet is filthy and dirty. It's unsanitary. Sometimes the food is crap. Sometimes the food is crap that they give you in jail. Yeah, there's nothing pretty about it. You get what they give you. And sometimes people are so turned off by what they get in jail, they don't even eat. They pass it. And I'm not talking about our modern day prisons to where, people will send you money to your little account and you can go and buy some chips and a honey bun. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the prisons from back in the day. Well, where, the ground wasn't like pavement. The ground was concrete, rat poop everywhere, feces. That's the kind of prison I'm talking about. In this modern society, they're trying to dress it up and make it all pretty. And I guess that's how people keep going back. That's why the enemy dress up sin, to get you to keep going back and making you feel as though you're missing something. You're not missing anything back in prison. You have to hate it to a point where you never want to go back. No, you're out of it now. You have to hate the fact that someone was over you, giving you orders and screaming at you and yelling at you. You have to hate the drama. You got to hate the fact that there's not much light in prison. I don't even know if there's windows in prison. If there is, there's bars on it. Yeah. Yeah, you have to hate that to a point where you never want to go back. I have to hate sin to where I never want to go back. I can't forget what it was like. That's what happened with the children of Israel. They forgot what things were like in Egypt. They forgot how they used to get beaten. They forgot how they were overly worked. They forgot how their women were raped and their children, a lot of their children were taken and thrown into the Nile River. They forgot. And so when Moses came, try to be, Mr. Freeman, and they came out of Egypt, they came to a place where they started reminiscing. Sometimes we do that. The Lord will take us out of a situation. The Lord will set us free. He will loose the shackles and break the chains off of us. And then sometimes we come across an old photo or sometimes a certain smell, whatever it is for you, Sometimes it's a certain scent that will begin to remind you of something in the past. And then you begin to start reminiscing. And then you forget all the painful nights, the nights where you were crying, the nights where, you were caught in that crossfire, the nights where it was just drama every day. You forget that and you just start thinking about when you and such used to kick it and how y'all used to get high and how y'all used to get lit and pissy, drunk, and all kind of foolishness that I'm not even going to go into. You know what I'm talking about. You begin to reminisce and you begin to think on I can't even say the good times. You think it's the good time, but the bad times that you are considering to be good, you begin to reminisce and think on those things, but you forget the depression. You forget the sadness. You forget the feeling of feeling inadequate and feeling unvalued and feeling less of a person, less of a human. You forget those things. And so what happens a lot of times is people will start going back. The children of Israel, they wanted to go back to Egypt. They wanted to go back to Egypt. They started bringing back up how things were in Egypt. Yeah. We had melon. We had cucumber. We had garlic. We had all kinds of things. It would have been better had we still been in Egypt. And sometimes the enemy will get you to believe that things would have been better off if you were back in the world. No, you've been called out of the world. You've been called out of prison for a reason. You have a work to do. You've been called to a higher ranking in this world, in this kingdom, not this kingdom, but that kingdom, in this kingdom, in that world. There is no competition because everybody is a winner. You are on the same team. We're on the same team. And so there is no competition. There is no jealousy, no envy, no strife. There is none of that because we're all winning if we're on the same team. If we're on the Lord's side, then we are already on the winning side. And so we got to get to a place where when he calls us out, we are grateful because he could have left you there. Do you realize that there are so many people that you left in the world that's still in the world, that been in the world since you've been saved for X amount of years, still doing the same mess, yet God has freed you, yet he chose you, yet he called you. You still could have been in bondage to your emotions. You still could have been in that relationship. You still could have been sprung out on drugs and just a drug addict, a nicotine addict, yet he saved you. He had you on his mind. And I heard it said that there was someone praying for you, and you got to be grateful for that. Someone somewhere was praying for you, whoever it was. They prayed for you. That means God had you on his mind. There are a lot of people right now that are still in bondage. And they like their bondage. Why? Because they think that they are free. Why would a person want to stay in jail? Think about that for a moment. Why would a person want to stay in prison, right? If it's such a bad place, if it's such a confined place, that word confined means narrow, restricted, limited. If it's such a dark place, why would I want to stay in it? A person can only go into a mindset like that when they become desensitized to what freedom really is and what things are actually supposed to look like. Let me explain what I mean. If I think that being in prison and I look around and I think that me sharing a room with someone, you know, one person sleeping on the bottom, one person sleeping on the top, to me, I may be completely content with the fact that I even have somewhere to lay down, right? That may be freedom to me, being the fact, well, at least I have somewhere to lay my head, not realizing, but that's bondage though. You have to be told when to get up. You have to be told what to put on. You can't go out and buy a nice new pair of shoes. You can't, you know, go out and buy you a new garment. No, you have to utilize what's made available to you, what you have. And sometimes it's not always pretty, but to you, that may be freedom to you because you become numb. You know, there's people like that in prison. They just get to a place where they just become numb to everything. And they've convinced themselves that, you know what, this is freedom to me. Especially if it's someone who has a life in prison, man. If the Lord doesn't step in and save them, you know, they have to really take on a certain mindset to just live the rest of their days in any type of peace, because this is such a confined place. It's narrow, it's closed off. You know how people can feel claustrophobic? That place is like that. It's closed off. You will never again have that same freedom that you think you have. And so, yeah, a person can become numb and desensitized to what freedom really is and what it looks like. Yeah. We have these trays full of dog food. That's what it looks like. Yeah, you know, we don't have the proper hygiene that we need in jail and prison. Yeah, they treat you like what you are when you go to prison. It's nothing like natural society. Many of us, we don't know that because we've not been. And like I said, that's a good thing. And we don't need to do anything apart from persecution. We don't need to do anything that's going to get us there in order to find out. No, I don't need to smoke cigarettes to know that cigarettes is bad and that it gives me, you know, lung cancer and throat cancer. No, I know that prison is bad. And I understand the value in my freedom. And so if I understand the value in my freedom, then I'm going to maintain my freedom, and I'm going to walk in it. I'm going to hold my head high as the king that I've been called to be. And I'm not going to look back. Once I've been set free from prison, once I've been let out of prison, you know, you got some people, they count down their days to when they are about to get out. They count down their days. And when they get out, they don't look back. They never look back. And they tell themselves, man, I'm never going back there. And, you know, they start making different decisions to never go back there. They start making actual changes in their lives. This is what it's like for the sons of God. Yeah, you've been called out of prison to be a king. Never to return, never to look back, never to desire those old things. Yes, the Lord has, not only has he made you whole, but he's made you free. Free in your mind, you know? Free in your mind, free in your emotions, free in your heart, free on the inside. You're no longer desensitized to your world. Like I said, when I was in the world, I thought I was free. But what was happening was I was growing numb. Yeah, you know, the longer you are in sin, you start growing numb. You start becoming desensitized. And the longer you stay that way, then you become cold-hearted. You become cold-hearted. And you know that people's hearts are waxing cold, number one, because Jesus says that men's heart are going to fail them in the end times and that their hearts are going to wax cold. But number two, you can cut on the news and see that people's hearts are waxing cold. That's what sin does. It imprisons people, making people feel like there's no way out, making people feel like I'll never come out of prison. Yeah, I'll never come out. I'll never, like, yeah, this is life in prison for most people. Most people are walking around with that mindset that them in the world right now is them never getting out, because they already believe that you only live once. They already believe that they're living their best life. And so you're going to have people that becomes numb, that become desensitized to the fact that they're in bondage and that they're in sin, and they like their sin. You know, they like competition. They like the parties, they like the clubs, they like the drama, they like the traumatic experiences. They love the world. They love the world. You have people that are never gonna come out of the world because they love it and they think that they are free. If I think that I'm free, then I'm not going to look for any other way out because I think that I'm free. I used to think that I was free, but I was in bondage. That's what sin does. It doesn't matter how you want to dress it up. It doesn't matter how you want to take it. It doesn't matter how you want to hear it. Sin is bondage. You're in prison if you are in sin. I want to tell you that in the prettiest way possible. If you are in sin, you are in prison and you are blinded and you are becoming more and more desensitized to the world around you. There are things that you cannot see and you will not see unless the Lord calls you forth. If God does not call Lazarus forth, it doesn't matter what anyone does. Jesus has to call you out. And Jesus says, no man comes to the Father except the Father draws them. Let God draw you. Let God draw you. And maybe he is. But not everybody's going to answer the calling. Not everybody is going to make moves to get them out of prison. Man, do you really want to get out of prison? Because if you do, you wouldn't be fighting every day. You know, there are certain things that you can do in prison that will delay your process. There are certain things you can do in prison that will keep you from leaving out when you're supposed to leave out. If you're going in there and you're misbehaving, because, you know, there are rules and laws in prison. Yeah, because the criminals, they need to be told what to do too. They need to be told what to do. There's laws. And so if you are set to get out on this day in this year, you are scheduled to leave around this time, but you're breaking the rules and you're breaking the laws and you're fighting and you're doing anything and everything that you want to do, then you can delay yourself from getting out. You can delay the process. And so if I have a mindset that tells me that I am okay the way that I am, if I have a mentality that says that, no, this is freedom to me, then I'm going to stay in my bondage. I'm going to stay in my chains. I'm going to stay in the world if I am allowing myself to become more and more desensitized to the things around me. If I want to remain blinded and not know that there is something greater, that this is not all that there is and that the devil is running the world, then I'm going to stay that way. Yeah, God will leave you where you are if you really want to be there. If you don't want to leave prison, you can stay in prison. You can, if you like prison that much, if prison is your best life, then you can stay in prison. You do not have to leave prison. There are going to be individuals, and there are individuals who they do not want to leave prison, and they refuse to leave prison because the mindset, the mentality, their mindset does not adjust like that elephant that is loose from his chains, but he's still in chains in his mind. You got people in prison with chains wrapped around their mind. They don't realize that they can be free, that they can leave, but they start being governed by unclean spirits and devils begin to torment them and to bother them. And just like in the physical, that happens in the spirit. Spiritually, people are in prison. That's what I'm talking about. When I'm talking about being in prison in the world and coming out of it and reigning as a king, I'm talking about being spiritually in prison. Your mind doesn't alter. Your mind doesn't adjust. You're numb. You're numb to the truth of God. You're numb to salvation. You're numb to Jesus Christ. You're numb to repentance. You're desensitized to the fact that evil is increasing. You're desensitized to the fact that the enemy is pushing his agenda through the music and through television, through the devices. You're just desensitized. You're desensitized. That word desensitized is numb. Your numbness, meaning that should affect you in this way, but it doesn't. That's what desensitized means. When something that's supposed to affect you just does not have that effect on you, that's when you know you are desensitized. No, this is supposed to move your emotions this way. This is supposed to cause you to begin to think and to feel a way. But when it does not, then that's an indicator that you are growing numb. And that's what's going to keep people in prison. That's what's going to keep people in bondage. And so the sons of God, those who God has called out of darkness, those who God has called out of a lifestyle of sin. You got to be grateful for your freedom. And you know that you truly are grateful for your freedom when you are living a life daily unto the Lord. Yeah. You understand that your life is no longer yours, but that your life is the Lord's. And you're laying it down daily. You're laying it down daily. And so we show our gratitude, number one, by worshiping God because he's good. And then number two, because we don't want to go back. And there's nothing back there. I want to let you know that now. There's nothing in prison. There is nothing in prison. Nothing to satisfy the soul. Nothing that would keep a person in their right mental state of mind. There's nothing in prison that would keep a person except the fact they be in bondage and they be desensitized. So there's nothing in the world. I want to let you know that now. I don't know what you think that you're doing and what you think you're gaining. I want to let you know that what do you profit if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? What you've invested and what you've gained in this life, when you leave this earth, you can't take none of that with you. All that you've accumulated, all that you will possess, when you die, that's going to go to somewhere else or someone else when you die. And so what are you doing? What are you doing? This world is going to pass away. You can live forever with God in freedom. And you don't have to wait until you get to heaven to experience freedom. Jesus makes freedom available right now. He says the day that you hear his voice, do not harden your heart. Today is the day of freedom. Today is the day of salvation. Freedom is available. Do you know that? It's available. People can have freedom. They just don't want it because they think that they are free in their sinful state. God desires to free people so that we can free people. You cannot free people if you are in bondage. That's why we cannot be of the world. That's why we cannot listen to the world, because the world is not free themselves, and so they can't tell us what freedom looks like. They can't tell you what you should be doing as a son of God. No, because your freedom looks different than the world's freedom. The world thinks freedom is this, but you know what true freedom looks like. Yeah, because God has opened your eyes to see, and that's what he wants to do. He wants to open our eyes so that we can see things for what it is, so that we can embrace who he's called us to be and what he's making us. We have a work to do. We have a work to do. Yes, we have a work to do. And so may the Spirit of God, may he give you the ears to hear. Be cautioned how you hear. That's going to determine what you do with what you are being given. You can reign and govern on the side of Jesus Christ, or you could remain in bondage. You could remain in prison. But for those of us that he's calling out of prison, he's calling you out only for the purpose to reign. Yeah, that's why he's called you. And so be encouraged in Jesus' name.